Anyways, all right. Last time I tried to cover this video, all sorts of crazy stuff happened in the world that I had to look at and respond to. Hopefully that won't happen again. So, here we go. Whee! Special effects. Ooh, cool. All right. Anyways, so this guy doesn't know what the word atheist is, I guess. Sure, why not?
Day one. Yes, another day, man. To all my subscriber, respect. To those who still emoting there, the emoters. Those who's using fired gas. Man, they're so wrathful and hungry. Where are your logics? Where are your logical ammunitions, man? Stop demoting. Emote.
I hope he gets to an argument soon.
Oh, God. Now, I'm going to deal with this issue of atheism redefined as absence of belief.
All right. Now, when did that happen? Because it was a while ago. It was a long time ago now. It's been several years at least. Who cares, though? Okay? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Even if you were right and it was redefined today, so what? Why does that matter?
You know, reading some of these comments that some of these people made, you know, that they just lack belief in God.
Yeah. It's almost like people are trying to tell you what they think, but you don't want to listen to them or something. You don't want to believe them. It's so weird. It's like, look, if somebody tells me they believe in God, I believe that they believe that. And if somebody tells me they don't believe in God, then I believe that they don't believe that. It's really not that difficult.
You know, as if, you know, it's something that just brute fact, you know. I don't participate in not believing that there's a God.
Correct. I don't participate in not believing there's a God would mean that you do participate in believing that there's a God, because that's a double negative.
I'm going to get to information from William Lane Craig.
Good old William Lane Craig.
On guard.
Oh, jeez. All right.
Let's see what William Lane Craig said about this.
Why don't you have your own argument? Who cares what William Lane Craig said about anything? And last I checked, he defended genocide because God ordered it, and couldn't think of anybody that was hurt by God's orders. I can think of a lot of people that were hurt by those orders, you know, and he's like, oh, yeah, the kids got killed, but that was doing them a favor. It sent them immediately to heaven. Just insanity. So I really just don't care what William Lane Craig has to say. And that's your entire argument is saying what William Lane Craig said. Not good enough.
Redefinition of atheism. And I know that the gun is ready to blast.
Just get to it. Just say it. Just do whatever you're going to do. Just do it.
Now, this is what William Lane Craig said concerning this.
He was wrong.
Absurdity.
It's not absurd.
Very often, atheists themselves admit that they have no evidence of God's absence.
No evidence of God's absence. I don't know what atheist ever admitted to that. I don't believe William Lane Craig at all. I don't think that any atheist that he ever interacted with actually admitted to this. I think that he wrote that because it sounds good. I don't believe him, not even for a moment. There is overwhelming absence of evidence concerning God. There's where is the evidence of God? I look around. What do I see? The trees? No, I see my house. Okay, but outside there's trees, but that's none of that is evidence of God. You know what would be evidence of God? God would be evidence of God. But I do not see that. I don't see a God. And so I don't have visual evidence. I don't have any sensory input regarding God. I don't smell it, taste it, hear it, sense it, nothing. None of those things. So, yes, there's overwhelmingly non evidence for God. So, why anyone would admit to there not being no evidence is rather silly, since, yes, that's all we have is non evidence of God. If we had evidence of God, you wouldn't need faith, and neither would I. And we could agree that God existed, and then we could figure out what the bleep God is, how it works, and what it wants, maybe. But we don't have that. So what we have to rely upon is either people that wrote down stuff about God saying what God is or isn't, or other people that talking about the stuff that's written down that say they know what God is, etc., etc., etc. So you who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything to say this. And even if you were right, or even if Craig was not being dishonest, which I think he is being, and lots of atheists have admitted to there not being a lack of evidence, which is a weird way to put it, then aren't they saying there is evidence of God? Which in this case, that case, wouldn't they be a theist then? So Craig is not being truthful. If he was right, then the atheist is saying yes, there's evidence of God. But then why wouldn't they believe that? So Craig has to be lying about this.
But they try to put a different spin on it. So they're so desperate. They all tell you no one can prove a universal negative like there is no God.
Okay, I don't know how many people have told you this, but the statement itself that you can't prove a universal negative would be a universal negative. So you'd have to say something like, except for this sentence, you can't prove a universal negative. But then, of course, you're performing a different logical fallacy of special pleading on that sentence, but nonetheless, okay. Within formal logic, you can show that a universal negative exists, at least in terms of the idea that it's possible that a universal negative exists. Beyond that, though, it would be extraordinarily difficult, if not outright impossible, to show a universal negative isn't a thing. Because how could you do that? It's not a thing that anyone can really do. It's only correct in logical terms, and only for the abstract, not for the concrete real world that we have here at our hands to examine. So you need, though, a way to falsify the idea that you're proposing of God. So you're saying this, the universal negative of there not being any evidence, like, how would I prove that? Because I'm pointing to the fact that there's no evidence and saying, look, there's nothing there. I've proven that there's nothing there, but I'm not showing you something because the showing is not possible when there isn't a thing to show. So what he's doing is he's conflating evidence all over the place, equivocating it back and forth between types of evidence and types of proof and types of um, epistemology, ways of knowing what's true. And that's what William Lane Craig is doing. And that's all he's doing. And he's doing it deliberately to muddy the waters, and confuse the whole situation. All he's doing or attempting to do is shift the burden of proof to the atheist to prove that God is not a thing. It's not our burden. It's your burden to prove that God is a thing. It's always been your guys' burden. It will always be your burden. Atheists, by and large, say, I don't believe in God. I don't even know what God is. I don't know what I don't know. And you know what? If you tell me what it is, I probably won't believe in it then, because I don't have any good reasons to do so. So, Craig, like many apologists before and after him, wants desperately not to have the burden of proof. All they ever have is arguments. They never have proof. You don't have proof either.
They think this somehow excuses them from needing evidence against God's existence. But not only is it false that you can't prove a universal negative, for instance, all you have to do is show something is self contradictory.
And that's been done many, many, many times in regards to various concepts of God that have been put forth by theists. A all-loving, all-powerful God, and the existence of things that aren't good in the world that we occupy are in conflict. So the argument from evil negates a all-loving, all-powerful God. And so you have to give up one of the two things, that it's all powerful or that it's all loving. But what theists instead do is make all sorts of excuses to why it's okay to have evil. So it's not really loving in the sense that I understand loving at that point. And it doesn't negate the argument. So rather than trying to negate the argument, they switch around things and move goalposts, etc. But that's all of the entire operation of apologetics, is to continuously move the goalposts around. God being omnipotent is also a problem because of the word omnipotent. This has been demonstrated many, many times before, and the very simple idea of the question, rather, can God make a rock so heavy it can't lift? No is the answer. Why is no the answer? Well, you're told God cannot perform paradoxes, or at least that God cannot go against God's nature, and its nature is the greatest thing, so it can't make something greater than itself. Okay, so there is something that it can't do, so it's not omnipotent. But they say, no, 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 omnipotent, we're going to redefine it to be anything that's logically possible. Okay, then it's logically potent then. Why not use a different word? Well, I don't know, but tradition has made them maintain the usage of the word omnipotent, despite the fact that it's been shown to be incoherent many times over. They don't care. They keep using the same word. And they redefine what omnipotent means. And then go, oh, no, no, it always meant that. It always meant logically possible. Of course, it doesn't mean things that are illogical. That's silly. It's like, no, but you said you can do anything, which means you can do things that are not possible to do. And no, that's a non-thing. They'll say it's a non-category. So anything is only the things that are possible, and on the argument goes, because they don't want to concede that the word is just a problem and drop the word and use a different word. Use a different definition and a different word in total that would say God can do what is logically possible to do and cannot do the logically impossible. And but then that wouldn't be omnipotent, be logically potent. Okay, we've already removed one of God's attributes. What's next? Well, it's omnipresent. Oh, but I've talked to Christians that insist that God isn't in hell, so it's not omnipresent. It's not everywhere because there's places where it isn't. So if God isn't in hell, then there's at least one place where God isn't. So now it's not omnipresent. All right, there goes another God attribute. How is all so it's logically potent, semi present, and and it knows everything. Well, does it know what it's like to do something that it can't do? No, it doesn't know that. So now that attribute goes out the window. So that pretty much negates all three classical attributes of God, rendering God less than it was before. And if God isn't the full outmost thing that it could be, then, well, that negates the argument of greatness. So that argument's gone for God. And if it can't necessarily do everything, maybe it can't make the universe. So then there goes another thing, and it all falls down rather quickly once you think about it. But that would require, not reading what William Lane Craig says, and instead, actually thinking about stuff, reading some other books, maybe not by Christians. It's just an idea. Not that Christian writers make you not think, but, think outside of your box might be a good idea.
But more importantly, this claim is really an admission that it is impossible to prove atheism.
And that's just completely incoherent. I don't believe in God is a true statement. I could prove that. It would require some sort of machine on my head, but hypothetically, if you have the money to fund the research, we can get enough scientists together and we could prove that I don't believe in God. Pretty sure about that. But what you mean to say is you can't actually prove that there isn't a God. Well, I already demonstrated that many attributes of God can be dismantled by Craig's own idea that if you can show it to be inconsistent, then it isn't. Well, all of the divine attributes, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, are all flawed in one way or the other. So it's not really those three things. What else is not God actually? So God isn't the greatest thing that you can conceive of. So it's not that then. What else is not God? Maybe God is not actually real. Maybe God is actually just an idea that we made up in our minds and evolved that idea throughout time. That's a far more plausible explanation of what God actually is. And so I don't have to prove that God doesn't exist. You have to prove that God does exist. All I have to do is give reasons to say belief in God is illogical, which I have plenty of reasons for that. And on your side, what Craig has attempted to do is say, well, we have plenty of reasonable reasons to have faith. Thus his the name reasonable faith. And I go, that's funny, because faith is not reasonable. Believing in something without any evidence isn't reasonable. And yes, it is blind faith. I know you guys want to pretend that it's not, but it is. Absolutely. Every single time you actually examine any religion and get to the core components of what make it possible, it does land into blind faith. There's something somewhere that you have to believe in because just that's it. And usually that stuff's about the supernatural claims. I read a comment recently. Somebody said there was a chain of custody for the stories of the Bible. No, not really. There's an idea that there's a chain of custody. And who has that idea? Christians and Catholics. They say that they have a chain of custody. I don't believe them. I have no reason to believe them. They have every reason to lie. They have zero reason to tell the truth because they want to support their idea. And they also brought up the stupid shroud of Turon, which is just, it's like that's been debunked a million times. And the thing is, it's so funny. I read a thing about it recently. It's like they let them cut like a tiny piece off, and then 3 pieces of that piece were sent to labs, who all declared it to be a forgery. And then this guy set up $1 million challenge that if anyone can reproduce it under insane conditions, that person would win the $1 million. And he set it up so like you have to do it with materials and tools and techniques that they had back in those days, a certain time frame, as if he knows what tools and techniques they had back then. But of course, he's assuming that the shroud is from that time, which none of the scientists agree with. They all say no, that's not where it's from, and a big deal is made out of that. Nobody has accepted the challenge, but it's a false challenge. Unlike, say, the JRIF challenge that was up for a long time. I wish it still was up, but whatever. They offered $1 million to prove anything, any special powers that people had, and nobody ever got it. Nobody even got close, because when you test the thing, it always results in showing that there isn't any power there. There isn't anything to it. There's nothing of substance there. And so, why can't we test God? Maybe because there's no substance to it. Because if God was testable, you'd have ample evidence and you wouldn't have to do this whole stick with atheism's been redefined, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Or, well, you can't prove God doesn't exist. Even if that's true, so what? That doesn't render atheism false or unproven. Even if you're saying there's no God, you're saying, oh, you can't prove that. Well, you can't prove there's a God. Okay, we're back to square one. But somebody has to be able to prove it in order for it to be a coherent belief.
Atheism involves a universal negative.
No.
You can't prove a universal negative. Therefore, atheism is unprovable. It turns out that.
Wait a minute now. You said that you can prove a universal negative, but if you have a universal negative, then you can't prove. Which is it? Can you prove a universal negative or not? William Lane Craig is confused.
It is the atheist who is believing a view for which there is and can be no evidence.
Ah, yes. The 2Q Quay. When all else fails, pretend that you're in the same boat as the other person. No, we're not in the same boat. I don't have faith. I don't need faith. I don't need a belief. I have not a belief. Well, maybe I believe something, but not in God. So no to this. William Lane Craig is lying to you, lying to all of us. We see right through it. Prove there's a God.
This argument ought to be part of the Christian's apologetic arsenal.
Yeah, and Craig attempted to do it for a while, then he gave up on it rather quickly when he saw that it wasn't working. Complaining to atheists that they didn't understand the word atheist. He did that with Hitchens and some others, and I think he did it a couple debates, maybe 3 or 4. I'm not sure how many in total, but he stopped and he never did it again. So when he wrote that book, maybe he meant it then, but he certainly doesn't mean it now because he hasn't done it ever again. So maybe that tactic didn't work and doesn't work because nobody gives a bleep about how you think the word should be used or not. We don't believe in your God. It doesn't matter what you want to call us. I don't care. I still don't believe in your God. You still haven't proven your God. Get to the point where you prove God, and then I'll be on your side.
Arsenal is full of ammunition and weapons, man. Rational, logical argumentation that they cannot rebut.
Please, by all means, provide me with the logically coherent argument for God, I haven't seen or heard one yet. Every argument I've ever looked at has one or more logical fallacies. So please provide one that doesn't. Yeah, go ahead. I'll wait.
Because they don't have any good arguments. All they have is emotion.
No, that's you. You have emotion and no good
What
argument.
many atheists do at this point is to revise the definition of atheism.
No.
So that is no longer a view that God does not exist,
Yeah.
but becomes merely the absence of belief in God.
Yeah, no, atheists haven't redefined this. Again, this is a lost battle. Craig and others have lost this battle. And people keep trying to revive this, and it's dead. Nobody cares. Everybody's like, look, this is what atheist is, and that's it. Move on. But some people just really want to dig in their heels and say, no, 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 it's got to be this. No, we don't care. And it's like, well, all the philosophers and their high upper regions all use this word in this way. Nobody fucking cares. Doesn't matter. We don't use it that way. And if we get to that position, we're not going to use it that way. We're going to use it the way we want to use it. So that's going to die out over time as well. That's going to change as well. The paradigm will change and evolve because it does. That's how things work.
Anyone who lacks a belief in God counts as an atheist. This is not only contrary to the traditional meaning of the word, but it's really hopeless as a definition. Of course it is.
It doesn't matter. We don't care about tradition. We don't care if you think it's hopeless, whatever the hell that means. I don't believe in God. The end. Whatever word you want that to be, doesn't have to be atheist. I don't care. Call me a lobsterist. How about that? I'm a lobsterist. I still don't believe in God. Well, as a lobsterist, I believe in a deity, but it's not God.
This desperate man catch at a straw.
Huh? You're clutching at straws? Okay.
For on this new definition, atheism is no longer a viewpoint or position.
Oh no.
Rather,
no, it still is. It never has been. It's just a non-position that it describes my relationship with this thing that you're pretending exists. I don't have one. Hey, do you know Bob? Nope, I'm an a-bobist. I don't even know that Bob exists. You know, it's just. Anyway, so he has nothing to offer here, nothing new under the sun. But at least I covered this video without some weird stuff going on in real life. So I'm done with his video, and I'm going to look for some other video to talk about. I don't know if I'll find one or not. Hopefully I will. Maybe you have a video you'd like me to look at. If you do, email it to me, deconvertedman1@gmail.com. Until next time, and after that, be skeptical.